Bungalow Bill here. I have a new ship to launch as we face off against the remaining factions of Neater. As you can see, she's a cram battleship, and despite the cram buffs, there's a reason that the best faction craft all rely on railguns and missiles. Personally, I think that rails still need some large levers pulled to balance them. I like to see railgun component costs doubled and energy costs increased by 50%, possibly alongside a minor APS buff. Crams are just bad missiles at the moment. They have all the counters of missiles, less HP, don't track targets, have exposed firing pieces, take up more space, and don't really do more damage. If crams didn't bounce on water and experienced less water drag, they'd at least be decent against other ships, but they are currently awful against anything with low freeboard. Also, mortars are just garbage. Only the most cumbersome ships will ever get hit by mortars, and they delay the alpha strike damage, which is another huge disadvantage. I did originally have mortars on this ship, the Hull Breacher, just a few, but they couldn't even track the Great White because their tracking is just way too bad. In general, I think FTD balance has a long way to go. Repair technical costs aren't even within an order of magnitude of what they need to be, but all that said, the Hull Breacher still holds her own, and I'll be using her in the campaign against the factions that she can land shots against. Here we have it. We can call a council meeting. We don't even have to ask the other leaders of Neater to show up. We tell them to show up. When we say jump, they only ask, how high? Ah yes, jump for me. Thank you for assembling before me. I have called you here to inform you that you are all going to die. Now, settle down. There is no fighting here. This is the war room. As expected, they are quite grumpy. And peace was never an option. Have I been fortifying my borders and preparing for an all-out offensive? Well, maybe. But we all know that the conclusion was foregone. Alright, not much time has really passed since the last episode. I did spend a little bit of time capturing everything, but for the most part, pretty similar. I did spawn in the Hull Breacher. We have quite a bit of income. Anyway, we're going to start fighting everyone at the same time right now. Our first battle is not going to be terribly interesting. I'll try to get into some bigger things later. I think we've got some good ones lined up with the Lightning Hoods. Let's just shell ourselves a furnace. I do have GPU water on now, so it'll look a little bit different than it did before, with somewhat questionable reflection qualities because I am running a terrible graphics card, so I was getting some frame rate issues if I really turned those up. But it does mean that we'll get the Onyx Watch water that we didn't have previously, and some of my water skimmers are basically going to be non-functional. We actually did take damage. I guess, cram cannons are kind of a thing now. It still takes an incredible amount of luck to hit something this bouncy. I tested the Hull Breacher against the Crucible, and with the weapons off from the Crucible, I just wanted to see if I could hit it. The Hull Breacher is 2/3 the cost of the Crucible or less. But even with such a large target and the relatively small amount of bouncing it does, it's almost impossible to hit it with crams. You have to get obscenely lucky. We'll fight this battle against the Steel Striders first. I have improved the torpedo bombers. So they have, they did go to space once during the testing. They do have bank and yank turning, which makes them significantly dodgier. I think they should be able to solo the Woolen if they don't get terribly unlucky, but it's way, way safer to do it like this. All right. Here are the Woolen's missiles coming in. Depending on how we rotate, well, we're just sort of out of range, I guess. we kind of ran into them. We can either dodge them very well or get hit a little bit. These reflections are making it hard to find. I turned up the water clarity, so I should see it once we get close. These look like fish. It does have very powerful anti-torpedo defenses, though. We're still at 100%, so we haven't taken appreciable damage yet. And that barrage did moderate damage to the Woolen. It looks like it's running for the surface, though, which is quite strange. I wouldn't think that it's at low enough of a percentage to do that already. The craft do have to do that more aggressively than they used to, though, because scuttle settings are way more aggressive. Yeah, this isn't looking good for the Woolen. So, the bank to turn is still pretty bad. I did a lot of work to get these craft working reasonably well with it. Looks like we took a little bit of damage there. But it still causes problems sometimes. It's actually why they fly in such an aggressive pattern. They do a very, very sharp figure 8. Although, if we get unlucky and it's transitioning from one bank to the other, well, we can take a lot of damage. They're not very smart with their evasion. They do have a lot of yacht authority, so this shouldn't be happening. Although, yeah, I don't think it lost any yacht authority either, so I don't know why it went so low. Almost all of the yaw comes from the engines, and it looks like it still has it. I really have no idea why that happened. In time for some more torpedoes coming in. It's hard for me to control how clustered they are, though, because we swoop in towards and away from the enemy. Sometimes they'll all get laid on top of each other, and sometimes they'll get laid very spread out. Signal processor's not doing us any favors there, but we still got the hit. We've taken a bit more damage now, but still manageable. We're still flying. These torpedo bombers still really aren't meant for... Oh, that was a bit more damage. Aren't meant for solo fights. They're not really supposed to take incoming fire. They're supposed to be something with a larger radar and heat signature to draw fire from them. They're mostly designed to get to places quickly and put a lot of torpedoes in the water. Due to how exposed their missiles are when their bomb bays are open, they don't necessarily tank damage that well, especially when they show their underside like that. The missiles are just very, very exposed. Still, they work well enough for what they do. I couldn't really see what that Sea-Wiz was doing. I have no idea if those bullets were going in after torpedoes or if they're going after our torpedo bombers. Here we have the Eclipse against a small fleet of mine that uses some dandelions, which will hopefully be the things taking fire because they actually have smoke. Let's not put the darn needles over land if I can help it. As opposed to the Thundershocks and the Darny Needles, which do not have smoke. The Eclipse is not a very scary craft. I don't think we've seen one in a campaign yet. Looks like it's shooting at the dandelions. So we'll take a look at it. It really looks more like a luxury yacht than anything. Oh, it's interesting how that color is applied. I didn't think that's how paint is applied to these. Maybe it is, but maybe there's some trick that they're using to do that. I don't actually know. Maybe I turned water clarity down too far, or the water is just way clearer here. It's really hard to see where the water line is. Anyway, Mostly lasers, a little bit of missiles. I imagine we're going to take the damage fairly well. Let's see what the missiles go after. Looks like the Thunder Shock. I think I see a little bit of black confetti from it, from the missiles hitting. Yeah, it took a little bit of damage. I don't imagine the Eclipse likes those particle cannons very much. Is returning fire a little bit with the simple lasers, but I don't think the simple lasers do that much. I guess the black confetti is actually from these lasers. And I guess those aren't actually simple lasers. I assumed they were at first, but they're not making simple laser noises. Looks like we've knocked a little bit of firepower off of it. We took some damage ourselves. The Thunder Shock has taken the brunt of this attack, though. Did I successfully get off? Yes, I did. That one didn't look like it fired a full battery of particle cannons, but it can be really hard to tell sometimes. Alright, there goes the Eclipse. We probably had a few more resources than them, but not by very much. The Eclipse is actually kind of expensive. It looks like we've got an Aero Tyrant to fight. Not necessarily the scariest craft, but we are fighting it without very much. Like often happens, we have a lot of volume, but that's because some of these craft use very cheap construction materials. Something that's going to be interesting to see is if the darning needles can actually productively shoot at it a sufficiently high frequency of the time. I don't really take a close look at these craft as often as I should, so I've fought the Aero Tyrant a number of times, but I actually don't know what it looks like. I do know although it's a relatively low difficulty craft, it packs a lot of firepower, and if memory serves, it can be a little bit explodey. Alright, its tail guns are doing a little bit of shooting at the reamer, which is coming in. The Aero Tyrant is quite fast, but we are in fact faster. It did try to defend itself, though. But, well... this camera really needs to find a new block. And, oh yeah, that's not healthy. That was a pretty big chunk that it lost from that internal detonation. Reaver didn't really take that much damage. It, does look like something very important got crippled, though. Alright, here we have our first real high difficulty craft that we have to face. The Kobold. Yeah, we're actually probably reasonably similar to it in materials cost, but we'll see how this works out. We do not have any vehicles here. It looks like it's targeting the Drunken Duck, so I'm going to place the Drunken Duck really far away in the hopes that it'll get close to everything else. We don't have vehicles here that can tank the Kobold. We just absolutely don't. Especially the new Kobold. Let's take a look at some of the... oh, let's wait for it to get light. Take a look at some of the craft here that you haven't seen before. So this one is the Drunken Duck. Since it's so small, I sort of wanted to get into decos here and actually make a crew cabin and stuff. But then I remembered how frustrating they are and didn't really do anything except add some bars to the windshields. There should be a deco pack that's actual useful cabin stuff, and you can just drop all the cabin stuff. For one of my ships, I spent 15 minutes making a radar module, and that's just not a good use of my time. So you can probably figure out why it's named the way it is. It's a bit ugly. I built it off camera. It's basically just one of the Tycho's main guns dropped into a hover tank. It does have a moderate amount of armor, so hopefully it'll be able to at least tank a few shots from the Kobold before it goes down. We'll have to see, though. The main attraction in the show here, though, is of course the Kobold. So while the firepower isn't absolutely terrifying, I believe that's because it uses thump rounds, which just get a lower APS, or a lower score on the damage calculator than they sort of deserve. There is a lot of heavy armor. Now, if memory serves, explosive damage, including flak, goes through vents. Maybe this was changed, but the last time I checked, you could take out the Kobold with a relatively modest amount of flak shells going in through these vents. I do believe that thrusters have gotten significantly sturdier since then as well. Anyway, we're going to move to the Drunken Duck, and we're just going to see how long we last for. It is probably not going to be very long. Alright, so far so good. Oh, the Kobold is retargeted into the lungfish. Ideally, the Drunken Duck will put a decent broadside shot into her. Yeah, our lambs are going to do nothing to these shells. We're just going to get shredded. We are too cheap a craft to be able to tank this kind of rail fire. This is really going to depend on how fast the Kobold can rip our craft apart. Also, having these missiles launched the wrong way is not good, but the Kobold's missile defense is probably good enough that it wouldn't have mattered. Kobold is still at 99%. That means we probably haven't gotten a good hit with the Drunken Duck yet. It's retargeting. That was a shot at the skate, but it's probably heading for the Drunken Duck now. We have not managed to take appreciable firepower off of the Kobold yet. She just lost a lot of altitude, though. But that's probably just random bobbing. Yeah, we don't have anything that's going to penetrate her armor. We needed to get a lucky hit in with the Drunken Duck. Which actually is probably just bad luck that we didn't get one. I see some shells coming off there. We must have done at least some damage. Because the Drunken Duck uses much more accurate rounds than the Tycho. They have stabilizer fins in them. They're less powerful. And I think most of her firepower has been lost. It's not that important. Oh, those are Hesh rounds going right into the flank. The Kobold, I don't think, can tank those very well. So she's slowly losing firepower. She's also retargeting a lot. She probably doesn't have any multipliers on her target prioritization because they probably didn't exist yet. So she's just retargeting between our more expensive craft. The skate is also meant to cripple vehicles like the Kobold. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but those missiles with the Hesh and the EMP are pretty nasty. I see some more APS parts falling out, as well as some custom jet parts. And some more Hesh missiles impacting the Kobold from the side. Yeah, that looks like it's it for the Kobold. I don't think it killed anything. Actually, the lungfish might be 2 damaged right now. Oh, it's still fighting valiantly, though. With its 24 remaining firepower, there is not a lot of vehicle left here. It doesn't have, in my memory, up thrusters. It might have some roll thrusters, which are correcting it and keeping it from capsizing, but no up thrusters. All right, hopefully, oh god, is the Kobold not going to despawn from being too low? It does not have scuttle settings, does it? Nuts. At least we can see it. That's the good thing. We have 2 different crafts dropping sonar buoys. This is so annoying. I'm probably going to just pause recording so that I don't fill up my hard drive with this. This is so bad, though. We might be at the sort of place here where I take Rambot and get it to start scuttling. I'll try not to capture it, but I'll at least put an end to this fight. I found her. This water is dark, and I don't have an escape hatch from the Darning Needle, so I had to shoot my way out, so I kind of killed one of my Darning Needles. That's what the red text is from. Not literally dead, but I did kill a lot of control surfaces on my way out because I got kind of glitched into a block. To everyone out there making faction craft, please set scuttle settings. This is so unbelievably painful. Also, I tried to put huge engines into the hull breacher, but they're just too hard to protect. I know it saves a lot on the block count, but I had to give up on them. Alright, it looks like she's going to despawn soon. Are these ammo barrels empty? Because they're not exploding. If those actually are ammo barrels, I don't know why they'd be in the engine. Whew. Finally over. That was a massive pain. Well, there goes the first godly of the run. Here's to many more. Interesting to see how the Ramses does against the Trebuchet. It's not the best craft. It's significantly cheaper than the Trebuchet as well. I don't know if it has the tankiness to scrap with it. Well, it's dark. We're not going to see very much this fight. This really doesn't look like black paint, although it is. I haven't seen the Trebuchet in a long time, so I don't know if it's changed at all. If it has, I don't notice anything immediately. Okay, so hopefully, unlike a lot of my more recent craft, the Ramses actually has missile decoys. And we fire them immediately, and it looks like they've done their job. Trebuchet is firing missile decoys as well, but that's in response to our interceptors. We don't have our own missiles. We've taken a little bit of damage, but it looks like the Trebuchet is simply too explosive and can't take hash damage at all. Likely we took a little bit of APS damage. Yeah, we've lost some wood and other delicate coverings, but nothing terribly significant. In general, I don't think the Onyx Watch has vehicles that can fight against us that well. Because the Trebuchet using APS was kind of their best bet, since their missiles are very distractible, so things like the Iron Cordon is probably going to fall in a similar manner. On a lot of my large craft, I don't use missile decoys as much because they get very expensive when you need to distract missiles from a large craft. And you fight something that uses remote-guided missiles or laser-guided missiles or something, and you've spent 100k on a decoy and it's literally not doing anything, and you feel really bad. It looks like we've got our fight against the Exajewel, and this is starting to get pretty late into the episode, but by golly, I'm going to get the Hullbreaker into a fight no matter how long this episode has to go. The Thundershock and the Darning Needle are probably just going to kill the Fulgurite, which isn't going to be terribly productive, but I am not really going to give them commands. I'm just going to make sure that the Tycho actually shoots the Exajewel. And since I don't keep a very sort of tight grasp on what the lightning hoods do and don't do, or what they are and what they aren't. I'm not exactly sure what the extra is. I know I've killed it before. Okay, a lot of laser firepower. We do have pretty good amounts of smoke. Hopefully we'll be pretty durable. Probably pretty fast, and it probably doesn't use spin clipping to get there, unlike my water skimmers, which are spin clipped below the waterline. I'm not really sure what I think about this craft. Well, anyway, let's fight it and let's see what happens. Okay, good. We're losing a lot of blocks before our smoke starts. Let's hope that block confetti slows down a little bit. Looks like our first rail shots hit pretty hard. I don't think the reamer just immediately killed itself. Oh, 77%, okay, yeah, so that wasn't a good engagement for the reamer. It's probably going to detonate in a second if it didn't already lose its payload. There it goes. Not a lot of damage from that. I don't know what's running so slowly right now. Oh, that's a big hole in the middle of the exojoule. Well, yeah, I guess that'll happen. It should probably prioritize closer targets. It uses lasers. There's no excuse for it to get hit by a ramming craft like that. It likely also doesn't have the smarts to not run into land. It's really hard to build a craft like that. We'll find out pretty soon. We're not having much luck in hitting it with anything other than our fairly pathetic particle cannon at the moment. Yeah, a lot of lightning heads, water skimmers will kill themselves on land, and mine all sort of suffer from those same problems as well. Even if they can turn very quickly, if they're going fast, they have a tendency to drift. I think you can fix that with wings. You can position them so that as your craft sort of slides sideways, it produces forward thrust, and that can let you corner a lot faster. I've messed around with doing it a little bit for bank and yank to prevent crafts from being so drifty when you do it. And also just for making airplanes in general, you sort of put the wing blocks 90 degrees compared to the way you think that you'd put them, so that as they fall, they generate forward thrust, rather than as they go forwards, they generate upward thrust. So it lets your plane use just a little bit of angle of attack to keep itself airborne. It sort of converts that plowing into going forwards, but still not the most effective thing. All right, well, after we killed the exojoule this way, I don't think I'm going to respawn the reamer for the next fight with the Tycho. And I definitely don't think that I'm going to have one in the next big fights that I do. Interesting. We've got two different AIs for our different guns, and they've chosen different targets. I don't imagine these railguns are a terribly efficient way to kill the fulgurate. We're having some trouble hitting those missiles. Doesn't look like we really took appreciable damage. I don't think that the exojoule is really capable of killing something with strong smoke. Most laser craft aren't, unless you give up a significant portion of your damage for a bunch of frequency doublers. It used to be feasible to get really high AP. The candle used to have 300 or something. At which point smoke just did nothing. But now smoke's highly effective. None of my laser vehicles do anything through smoke. I haven't really tried to make them work, but I don't think it'd be that successful. It's time to shell another Onyx Watchcraft. This time, the Iron Cordon. I believe the Iron Cordon suffers from the same issue in that its missiles are going to be completely incapable of dealing with our decoys. Oh, actually, maybe not. Yet I don't think we have anti-missile cannon control on our missiles because I built the Ramses so late. So we're actually going to take some really big hits because we didn't quite distract all of the missiles. 4% damage. I didn't see anything important fall out, so I'm not that worried. Still, it's relatively even to what the Iron Cordon took. Actually, if we don't get a decent hit into the Iron Cordon and it gets another good missile barrage off, it could just destroy us, depending on where it hits. Those missiles are really nasty. Of course, the Iron Cordon is quite explosive. And I don't think it's firing as many missiles. It looks like something might have gone wrong with our flare because that shouldn't be happening. But it's still working. Those missiles either got distracted or maybe they were just missing the nose and had no guidance components left. That's always a possibility. Either the Iron Cordon has been rebuilt differently or we've just been failing to detonate ammo, because I was under the impression that one good Hess shell would just completely eliminate the Iron Cordon as long as it got into the ammo compartments. The Ramses also just carries a lot of different shells that can mess up craft that aren't meant to deal with them. There's EMP, there's Hesh, there's heat. Even flak can be really annoying for some craft. We've almost certainly lost capture progress again, though. It's going to take me a long time to capture Onyx Watch territory at this rate. Not sure if the microphone picked it up, but my chair was bouncing a little bit from my downstairs neighbor stomping. Here we have another battle. The Extinction against the Tycho, a Darning Needle, and a Skate. Relatively even from the resource perspective. That's way too low to spawn in. We're going to be highly reliant on the Darning Needle and the Skate for anti-aircraft purposes, because despite the fact that the Tycho should have functioning anti-aircraft defenses, it really doesn't. They just struggle to hit ICBMs. I think the main reason is because they're not energy weapons. There may be another reason for it as well that I realized later. Yeah, the fact that I didn't name any of my mainframes on the Tycho is like a little bit of a problem. I have no idea which one's which. This is something that I'll fix later. But I think when you pick up and place mainframes down, even using the prefab tool, I think they lose their detection settings. So this will be better than it was previously, but is going to require some inspection for me. Wow, I just hit the pause button on the recording software instead of the pause button on the game. That would be so unfortunate if I lost because of that. Well, you know, they're going to use Kamikaze Craft. I guess I'll use Kamikaze Craft. It is only fair that they get a taste of their own medicine. Looks like it blew up. Also, the Darning Needle may have taken critical damage right at the beginning. Or... it's hard to tell. I may have forgotten to finish a set of Darning Needles that all got to exactly 86%. And I thought I had recalled all of them. But I may have missed one. Okay, so the Extinction has not taken much damage, but it got pushed underwater. I am pretty sure that there is still an ICBM incoming. Yeah, we're having some trouble with that. There we go. That might have been the problem. It might have been that some of my detection was set a bit incorrectly. Well, I don't think we killed it with damage. I think we just pushed it into the water. The Reamer does have an incredible amount of thrust, so it can just kind of do that. Fortunately, this has scuttle settings on it. In theory, we could take it out. In theory. We dropped 3 sonar buoys. We still seem to be having some accuracy issues, though. Perhaps I could turn up the minimum required detection points a little bit. Fair is fair, you guys use Raymond Craft too. Yeah, the Darning Needle didn't despawn due to being AI dead. I don't think it ever took damage. I think I just forgot to finish it or something. It's really hard to tell. I mean, maybe it did just take an APS shell right at the beginning. One shell from something like the Extinction would just kind of annihilate it. That's just what you get with a craft this cost. You can see how slow the repair bot works on it. Although the Tycho has a lot of repair tentacles. It wasn't with the Tycho for very long, though. But it does sort of suggest that maybe it took the damage in this fight. Anyway, we are going to keep playing until the Hull Breacher gets in a fight. That fight, however, is not now because the Onyx Watch have fielded some of their new craft against us. As per usual, the Tycho is coming with its normal missile, but I'm going to stop repairing them as much so that we're not always going to see them. It can also only annihilate one craft at a time. In my previous campaign, we have seen these. Ooh, it looks like we already did some pretty serious damage. Oh, it's got shields. And it's dying. Yeah, that's just a lot of thrust. It's definitely giving some craft a lot of trouble. And there's the central gun. It might be... yeah, it's AI dead. I was wondering why the Reamer was retargeting. It has incredible preference for its current target. I set it up to times 10 or something. So it doesn't stop chasing a target until the target is actually dead. I don't think the Reamer got deep enough to AI dead something, though. That was probably a Tycho shell. Still, just as a large missile stand-in, the Reamer is very effective. Took damage too recently, I can't pull it. Looks like our CWIS is doing okay. It either had some trouble seeing some of those shells or some targeting priority issues. Looks like it took an APHE shell directly to the mainframe. Not particularly healthy for it. This is going to be a bit of a weird fight. Looks like I got caught by a black-tipped shark while I was attempting to capture a point with just a spare reamer. Let's see what happens. Do we manage to ram it before we die? Things do not look good for the black-tip shark. It is not faster than us. We're also way more reliable ramming things underwater because we're less likely to clip into them and just detonate. The lower closing speed is very beneficial for us. Maybe I should just kill all submarines this way. Stop bothering with torpedoes. Alright, I think people need to go through and fix what these craft think they are. Because the Steel Strider's submarines seem to have a strong tendency for overland movement. Alright, we are still not using the hull breacher. We have one more fight to go while it's on its way to the Steel Striders. I've been trying not to engage enemies, but they're kind of all over the place. I don't know how long it's been since I've seen the Perseus, and I'm kind of worried that it might be a nuke carrier. Looks like the answer is no, though. Mostly a rail ship. Looks like we had a pretty good miss to start off with. Another one just barely skimming it. It's getting pretty solid hits. Oh, it is a nuke ship. Hopefully the Darning Needle retargets into the nuke. Maybe there's no AI. It might have gotten dropped with no AI. Because the Darning Needle is refusing to target it. Oh, nope, it's going for it. There we go. I think it got dropped without being fully built, though. There was no nuke inside of that. Huh, but the Perseus is still building. I don't know why that wasn't working. The user interface can often be a little bit broken. My clicks seem to get lost most of the time in some interfaces. There was a nuke in that one, though. Perseus, I saw some APS components fall out, but it's not lost much firepower. We, on the other hand, have. We've lost the barrel. Oh, actually, maybe worse than that. We might be down rail juice and the other barrel. This is going to be a long fight, then. Enemy crafts are definitely having some very good luck with a rail fire. Just hitting all of the most important components, especially because they have to get through shielding. It takes a pretty significant amount of luck. I am on something that's spinning. This camera is so broken, I can't use it. The Drunken Duck is taking the nukes out pretty well, but... Not the Drunken Duck, the Darn Needle is taking the nukes out pretty well, but the Drunken Duck has just been having bad shot after bad shot. It's supposed to be targeting center of mass, and I checked out its targeting, and it seemed to work pretty well. So I don't know what the deal is. Our weapon's also really accurate, but we just need to be choosing absurdly bad aim points. We may have finally disabled the gun, though. We're definitely outside of our small missile range, though. I should potentially switch them to medium missiles and try to get a little bit more range. These do have a 20-second burn time and a regulator on them, so they have fairly long range for small missiles, but you can see it's still not good enough. Well, the Darning Needle at least is chipping away, and the Perseus spent a lot of materials. Just not good rail hits. A lot of materials on those ICBMs, I think. Okay, so it is just one barrel that we're down. Probably the shield generator as well, actually. Oh, and our engines on top of that. This is a small craft, so it does have some components kind of that are kind of critical and it can't really afford to lose. I don't know how we lost the barrel though. I don't know if we took Hesh damage. I don't see holes in the turret cap. It's possible that we repaired one with our repair tentacles. But otherwise the Perseus must use Hesh. We have some Hesh defense in the turret cap, so it does have to hit us in a decent spot. I thought the Darning Needle was underwater because I'm used to having reflections. Alright, looks like we finally got there. Hopefully I can bring the hull breacher in. I decided to give it an escort to take down the ICBMs it'll be facing. And it's taking a while for it to retrofit the force in. It's supposed to have had repair tentacles on it so that it can build a small fleet and that sort of thing, but it doesn't seem to have any. I don't know why. I didn't think I forgot to save that version, but it happens sometimes, especially when I switch folders a lot. Alright, here we go. The hull breacher finally fighting. Oh dear. I don't think we're actually going to get any of the Darning Needles. This might actually be a huge problem for us. They're not actually Darning Needles. Some of them have been rebuilt into Thunder Shocks. You can tell because these have the wrong cost for Darning Needles. Only one's an actual Darning Needle. They're to shoot down ICBMs. In theory, the hull breacher is capable of it. I have put it against the extinction to make sure that it can actually shoot down ICBMs. But sometimes crafts just don't want to target the right things. Maybe an anti-missile cannon controller shows up. Oh yeah, we don't even have enough volume for the hull breacher. We need to despawn something before we get nuked. Okay. Are we targeting the right thing? It looks like it. So here we are. For armaments, we have 2 cram cannons using the 3D Tetris that I showed off in a tutorial video. These are pure frag, 4 barrels of it at about 70 firepower per barrel. Then the APHE is double-barreled, and the reason it's double-barreled, they're really good at shooting my turret caps. I think this probably immediately crippled the gun. If this was a shell from the Liberator cannon, it might not be. It looks like it didn't go all the way through, and the Liberator cannon is probably pure kinetic. But anyway, I'm using 2 barrels here to get more penetrating power from the AP portion. And then we have a cheeky little particle cannon. Not necessarily the most useful, but it's a lot of fun. These secondaries are kinetic Sea-Wiz 50 millimeters out of 1 meter autoloaders, and the one in the middle is about twice as powerful. And then we've got a little case-mated gun. Okay, I definitely gave these ammo controllers. Oh, I moved the ammo controllers, and the casemates look like they didn't pick up the new ones. Well, I'll fix that off camera. All my other guns correctly picked up the ammo controllers. I had these turrets 2 meters higher, and I decided it was too high. I dropped them. Not only did I drop them, I dropped everything under them, and everything under the bridge as well. All the AIs came down, and it also moved the ammo. And when I moved the ammo, I lost a link to the casemates. The APS were smart enough to all pick up the correct ammo, but the casemates were not. Check out 1100 firepower, 1.2 million materials. I believe that's all of our firepower. I don't think we've lost any. Question is if we're getting nuked before we despawn something and get to bring our anti-nuke vehicles in. The answer is probably going to be yes. I'm probably also going to have to take manual control over our vehicle. It looks like we AI deaded this. I thought I saw the AI dead text. Yeah, there it is. Did we get nuked? No, we're still at 100%. Our CWIS should defend us from incoming fire like this. Alright, it looks like we have a Thundershock up and running, so that should protect us from nuclear warfare. Let's see if I can capture our next cram barrage coming in. Oh man, this ship was already dead in the water. These first two are APHE, at least. Looks like the following two were as well. Those look like they got in pretty deep. And now the the frag comes in. And that's most of a bow, I believe. Yeah. Well, the Gertzi can't really stand up to this kind of firepower anyway. Looks like we're trying to avoid, but it's way too late. We do have serious bow thrusters, so if I can get a yaw right command on, I could avoid this. And unfortunately, our naval AI wasn't that smart. I don't actually know. We're very massive, so that ram doesn't work the way it would like. I don't know if the turning circle that you specify is a radius or a diameter. I actually gave the AI the correct turning circle if it's a radius, but not if it's a diameter. It doesn't tell you in the tooltip. And the on-water AI is not smart. Looks like we have not taken much damage. Our yawing seems moderately successful. I think our turrets may have taken that shot because it's the only shot they could take. These, on the other hand, no. They could have shot at the Tron time, I believe. Oh, the Norge. Okay, the Norge. I'm used to there being a Tron time here. Looks like the dockyard's going to be the next target. I was just waiting at that despawning lag. We're still going to have a slow game speed because of collisions. The hull breacher, it's named after the Magic the Gathering card, by the way, is programmed to get very close to enemy vehicles. I had intended to give it some commands to keep it offshore, but didn't quite do it in time. So the bow thrusters are a little bit cheesy. But if they didn't work, the Megalodon would go at 20 meters per second, so I don't feel that bad about it. There are actually internal bow thrusters in here to augment the external ones they're basically azipods. Ooh, that looked pretty good. Alright, hopefully we'll get some better frame rates in a second. Once we get a little bit further away from shore. This fight isn't big enough for this much of a slowdown. So I'm assuming it's collision checks. And having multiple despawning enemies will do that as well. It's definitely better to Definitely better to pause and let them despawn. I think the quality of the despawning animation isn't terribly important, so there should be a little bit of a focus on having it not slow the game down as much as it does, and having your ships retarget away from despawning enemy vehicles. It's annoying to just keep shooting them when they're already dead. There's not much left. This is tremendous overkill. Although those were only our frag guns that fired there. We did AI dead it, but we didn't completely annihilate it like we could have. I mean, most of the damage was wasted. The shells detonated in slightly the wrong place, and a lot of the fragments missed on the ones that didn't, mostly overpenned. That really wasn't a very impressive showing for those cram cannons. I'm assuming it's mostly an issue with overpen, both from the APHE and from the frag. They just don't effectively handle the small vehicle. I don't see... Okay, our little guns, which are just for show, are on the same mainframe as our Sea-Wiz. Our Sea-Wiz is actually probably going to be more effective at breaking these buildings down than our main guns. It's possible that I should have timed fuses on the APHE with a fair offset, so that it's probably the pen depth fuse that'll set it off. But if we really go past the target, like that, we'll get a detonation. Not much resistance here. This facility also passed up its opportunity to spawn something truly terrifying. It spawned in an asphodel, which it's... Oh man, well, that's unfortunate. It looks like we got a decent hit in, just not really to what I wanted. Which decided to meet up with some other vehicles. So by the time I got here, it was long gone. They had 1 million materials to work with, though, which is less than it sounds like, because even something like the Asphodel, I don't remember what it cost, 700,000 to spawn in? It has a significant material load. Whereas I run a lot of these vehicles pretty lean. The hull breacher uses almost entirely crams as weapons, which do drink... They still drink a lot of materials, but less than some other vehicles. But it has no up propellers. There are no thrusters on the underside of the craft at all. So it is very, very efficient. I do have some hydrofoils inside of it, and it doesn't need them to operate, but I did see it submarine once when the bow got shot off. And I tested it with the hydrofoils in that level of damage to make sure that it could keep its bow above water. Well, anyway, I believe that's enough for this episode. Hopefully we'll get some decent ship battles in with the hull breacher instead of fighting facilities. And I hope you all enjoyed watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.